Hey, how you doing there? My name is Tom Lins Nyback. This is 365 Days Toward Racial Change. We are at day 335. See how we'll see if we can do. We got 30 more of these to go after this. Oh, plus another one um, that I had to redo. We'll get to that in a couple days. Oh, but today we got some other things going on. We're here talking about black in America. What that means, it means something because it's definitely impacted my ability to grow in a company, to have a voice um, in the face of white leadership. It's not easy speaking truth to power. It's really not, but for some reason I have a knack for it. My life would be so much different if I could hold my tongue. But I see people doing the screwiest stuff. It brings to mind. I think I've talked about this before, but I used to work with dogs. I'm probably not going to anymore unless I could open my own doggy daycare. I I look at how people do it. They just don't do it right. Anyway, we had these spray bottles, and where the one place I worked at, this used spray bottles to discipline the dogs. It works sometimes. Some dogs love it, so you never know. But anyway, we kept getting this. Um, the water bottles kept getting tainted with cleaners because the place used the same kind of bottle for cleaner and spraying water for dogs. And so somebody was mixing them up, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was pulling my hair out trying to get this place so we could have the water bottles. We tried marking them and everything, but still, these water bottles were getting tainted with these cleaners, and you can't spray a dog with cleaner. That's animal abuse. So we're doing all like, and I had the burden. I was doing all this stuff, and I'm bending over backwards doing my part and trying to get the mystery of this out of the way. Turns out, you probably already guessed it, the owner of the place was the main dude mixing up these bottles. Oh, that's like, and the thing is, like, I never get it. Like, power is just so stupid. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, now how do I tell this guy? Because this guy was a hothead. So I tried to calmly tell him one time, and that went over his head. Because a black man don't don't tell white men stuff. I can't tell you how many times I could tell people the right thing. I said, hey, the building's on fire. We need to take a look at this. And white men look at me like, you know, they give me some lip service. They'll nod their head, but they don't listen to what I'm telling when I'm telling them the right thing. Oh boy. Fortunately, this doggy daycare I was at, we moved, and some other things happened where the spray bottle thing got fixed. But I don't know. It's interesting to tell that story to start this episode. You know, um, as we're gonna look at some contrast today in symbols of freedom and symbols of slavery. But real quick, been with me a while now because I see the views and comments. Thank you very much. I don't engage right now. My intention is to get the series done. I'm actually going to regurgitate and use this stuff again. But I appreciate you watching and your comments and all that. I'm going to get to that, I promise, because it's going to be great having a whole, hours worth of material. It's already written down, videoed. I can reuse this for a lifetime. Anyway, uh, so being with us, if you're white, black, somewhere in between, outside, don't want to confine you in that. That's not right. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. Is it white or black? You know, it's like saying we're the only poles of this, like north and south, but you can't get beyond that, and that's not right to say. If I'm going to have some integrity with this racism issue, very racist to say that you can only be between white and black. That's not right. But you've been with us a while. Me, um, I've got family members that keep up with me. I know I got some good friends. Then they've contributed some material. Thank you very much. So where you're at is this series is beginning to wrap up. Got 30 some more or so more to go. We'll see. You have your views change, understanding. I know I've gotten an education. You know, I'm thinking like, man, I'm getting a lot of resistance from the system. Like I always called it the system, considered a system and stuff like that, and people aren't treating me right, stuff like that. And man, that experience was real harsh. I wonder why that was. And you know, I you gotta realize, see, my burden to do this is because of my own naivety, like not realizing how much sex that your biological sex plays a part in the world in America, especially America is the most polarized, not just racism, but a lot of things. But like, didn't realize being a man had such a it was such a conversation going on that had no articulation, no foundation, no roots, directions, things like that. Um, had no idea about class and how that was important. Um, Definitely was clueless about race, and and once once I put the right lens on my life, I said, yeah, that's it. I might be going on about my philosophy degree. I'm almost there. Just got a few more classes. I'm gonna get the be a philosophy dude, right? And don't worry about what I'm going to do with it. Stop asking that question. That's not a proper question to ask a philosopher. Anyway, I'll do another episode on that sometime, maybe. But we talk about the Copernican revolution, and there's all kinds of revolutions, but it's the idea that taking applying the right science to a problem, and when you do that, it makes everything that's going on so understandable, right? And when it's moving from this um, idea of an Earth-centered universe, and what that means is there was a time people believed that the universe, the sun, everything revolved around the Earth, right? That when we're looking in the night sky and looking at the sun, that we think there was a time when people thought it orbited the Earth, right? And Copernicus came along, he redid that model so that the Earth revolved around the sun, and we were actually the ones in a locked into a gravitational relationship with the sun. Well, it's the same thing that happened to me with racism. You know, why is this not working? I don't understand the resistance here. What's going on? And this person's not doing this, and I'm pouring out my heart and energy and my soul, and getting but abuse back. Well, uh, when I took racism and looked at my situation from the perspective of understanding the relationship of race in my life, in the land, then the whole universe made sense. Another scientist, astronomy is a good philosophical conversation maker, and another astronomer had to do just the science around our understanding of um, orbits around the sun. Or now we know orbits around anything are not a perfect circle, right? The Earth doesn't go in a perfect circle around the sun. It goes in what's called an ellipse. It's a circle, but it's a little flat, right? And they have these things called two nodes and all this good science. But when this astronomer figured that out, suddenly planetary orbital periods made sense, right? We didn't have to do weird calculations and stuff. And they had some pretty elaborate schemes to understand, how these planets are appearing. They're appearing like clockwork, but they don't appear. It doesn't work if they're moving in a circle. There's this thing called retrograde and all this stuff that had to be figured out and understood. And this is the way it is through the whole three-dimensional universe plus time. And once this astronomer said, well, maybe it's an ellipse, boom, we could throw out all kinds of math and speculation and all this stuff. And that's the same thing that happened for me with racism, right? Maybe maybe you're white and part of the privileged folks. But man, well, why am I just born into privilege, right? And I know some white folks that are like, I'm glad I was born here, but it still doesn't make sense. You know, we can we can still be part of that part of humanity that desires understanding, for things to make philosophical sense, for things to have um, some reasonable continuity behind them. So, I say all that, that little excursion just to see where you're at, wherever you're at with racism, whether you are a hate person or if you're like me, just trying to, you know, make sense of my world. See, now that I can make sense of my world, now that I understand what's happening around me, what's been going on, now I'm armed, right? You know, like a person maybe on a surfboard. I can't get this surfing right and stuff like that. Well, you know, now I'm not an expert surfer, but there's stuff about diving under the wave, and there's a way to catch the wave so you can enjoy yourself coming back onto land. Maybe catch a curl and be really you know, in the zone. But it's all about having your science, your philosophy in proper order. That's important. So, like the nature hasn't changed. Racism's not really going anywhere. There's not, it's not like a some type of vaccine you can take for racism. Racism is unfortunately part of um, the it's part of what makes the world what it is, and it's going to be tough time finding a way to eradicate it if that's supposed to happen. I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claud Anderson. I read 3 of his works, and we have a lot of great stuff from him. His work informs a lot of what we do here. First book I read of his was A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask, Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power, and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. Also, if you look behind me, you'll see the hashtag #us2 symbol. You'll find Black women having their support, conversation, and getting along well. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a Black Facebook experience. If you cannot find your flavor, if you can't find your voice here on the World Wide Web, do what I did. Start your own little series. It could be written, video, whatever. If you have a business mind, check out Dr. Boyce Watkins at the Black Business School, theblackbusinessschool.com. There's another gentleman I'd like to mention, Tyrone Gregory, the self-employed tax guy. He's got some good education products, get you going in the right direction. Oh, as far as money in America, read this book, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, and glean what you can from that book about America, how what desperate men and organizations may do to keep their position secure. And finally, we have story time. I got to come back and review this again before we leave. This project, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. It's great, phenomenal work. Fictional account of slave life, informed by um, real events. Today we're in Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask by Dr. Claud Anderson. And we're going to contrast some symbols today. We're on page 126. Question 41. Is the Statue of Liberty an outdated immigration symbol? And I've been there. I've been to the Statue of Liberty once. I've been up through the crown, and I've walked around when I was a little kid. Been to Ellis Island and all that stuff. The Statue of Liberty was a big symbol when the Europeans survived their journey across the Atlantic. You see the big statue in New York Harbor and being welcomed into the United States. As you might guess, I'm going to talk about Black folks. We did not come that route. Once in the heyday of slave trade, initially the slaves are either kidnapped or sold out of Africa, come to the Caribbean for indoctrination, maybe some education, get a handle maybe on some language for where they're headed, and then they're dispersed into the Americas. And so for the North American, those slaves that came to the colonies, their stop wasn't Ellis Island, much later in history, but initially there was 3 islands: Jones Island, James Island, and Sullivan Island in kind of the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. and they would be there on the boats and be offloaded and then resold and distributed again up and down the colonies. Now, are those immigrants who had a better time coming into America, the immigrants, European especially, are of the management, business ownership class. You know, you're coming here, and maybe you're coming, you're a Jew, you're Italian, Irish, right? You look at some of the neighborhoods in America, and you see some of the vision. So, you know, you've got a, um, a racial connection with people who are already doing well in the system, and it was always intended to be that way. It was just the system since blacks were already um, pushed down, marginalized, um, kind of made for labor and all that. You know, so this the attitude towards blacks was always this oppressed labor class, but new, fresh European um, bodies coming into America would be, oh, the management class and all that. You see it today, and mostly a lot of America's, you know, paradigm with race. It's not changed much. You know, we got papers and a lot of lip service on the books where you can't overtly engage in racism and marginalization and treat blacks this way and such and such. But it's not changed the nature, the environment, right? The physics of how America works racially, right? That, you know, that's what I have to, that's what I had to learn. That's what I was talking about with the um, planetary motion and things like that. Once we recognize the dynamics, then we can, once we get the law, now we can um, have much more control, right? And America doesn't teach you that. America says from a little kid, the first thing they teach you in public school, black people were slaves and all this slavery stuff, and then they put some little sweets in there as far as emancipation and Abraham Lincoln and all this kind of foolishness in there, you know, to keep that young mind. They mold that young black mind that way. Now the white kids, you know, they go home, but you know, I don't know. Well, I don't know how the white kids went home. I know, like, when I'm learning that stuff, and there's no debriefing at home. You know, what'd you learn today? Well, Mom, I learned we were slaves and all that stuff. None of that ever happened in my house. Right? My parents were already stressed out and they were working their asses off trying to provide and stuff. Well, that's another thing anyway. So, but what I'm saying is, like, America has not moved away from that. They're very quick. Um, as far as what I remember of my early education is, you know, yeah, you're part of an oppressed, you know, and what that public education is really saying is, like, it's preparing me for this resistance and stuff. And my guess is they wanted me to really receive it to the point where I just walked out into the system and just shook my head, like, yeah, the white folks have better opportunities and stuff, and I just have to get along. And to a large degree, it worked. You know, I fell into the drugs. I fell into this and that. And it's really screwed up a lot of stuff, with that almost religion-like education about who I was supposed to be in America. Yeah, it starts in the early public schools. I'd like to see the curriculums now and see if educating, telling your black children that their ancestors were beaten and raped and coerced and excluded and had to fight, put more energy to have to participate equally in America, right? I don't know. I don't have any kids, so I wasn't still not involved and to get the feedback like that. But it's interesting to think about. Um, Immigration isn't so much, it's not so much a big deal. It's interesting that right before our coronavirus, we had the panic at the southern border with Trump's wall, people from Central America traversing, their own gauntlet to try to rush and get up here as quickly as they could. And man, people were dying and drowning in rivers and stuff like that. But now with the virus, um, things are opening up now. But there was more of a concerted effort to close northern and southern borders um, to deal with the pandemic. Um, immigration, immigration has gone through some stages. It's still um, unfairly slated towards helping European and whiter folks get into the land. If you remember back some episodes ago, I talk about Haiti and um, America had a good immigration thing, but then they have these percentages of who can come in, right? Black people are very much marginalized, even on the immigration scale, and Europeans are vastly accepted as participants in the immigration cycle. Here, I think about when we talked about Haiti. Haiti it's the one country where blacks revolted, got their independence and freedom. Well, America didn't want empowered black people coming in like that, you know. So they tweak immigration policies to keep, affirmed, empowered black people kind of out of the mix in that way. A part of this, let me end with this, is the immigrants, those with immigration status, refugee status, they they have access to uh, better resources, even more so than indigenous black people in the land. They get some favors, they get help um, to participate and compete in America. And Dr. Anderson's, he's real adamant about changing some of those designations so that black people can be more competitive or put more restraint on immigrants and refugees coming to the land. Donald Trump is a good illustration of this in our relationship with China, because he found out that China, as far as the world goes, is designated as a developing nation, and developing nations have um, a lot of get a lot of favor and resources and support from like the World Bank, World Health Organization, stuff like that. Well, Trump's like, China's doing all right now, you know, and you know he may have a point, an argument against previous administrations to let China just run and run and run like that, where China's not. I mean, sure, China had its day to develop, but it's not seriously at risk and trying to develop. China's pretty far along and is well established. There's no longer a need to call it a developing nation. So Donald Trump is, and I think rightfully so, whatever misgivings I have about our president, but I think rightfully so that China needs to come up out of that and say, you know, you've got to start participating. You are on your feet as a country now. And so, you know, this thing about immigration and refugee status in America has that same aspects of that argument as China because, um, well, because these refugees and immigrants, you know, are getting so much favor and support, and where black folks are being excluded from that situation. So, you know, there needs to be some adjustments there in access to wealth and resources for these groups coming into America. I'm out of time. Great spending time with you again. Check in next time and we'll hang out some more. My name is Tomlin Nyback. 365 days towards racial change. Day 335 is in the can. Let's keep going. Send me your good vibes and everything. And we'll see you next time.